Chris Cuomo, thank you for the company. I have a quick note off the top here. Indulge me, will you? This is one of the privileges of having a platform, is sometimes you get to use it the way you want. Justin Timberlake, I've watched the coverage here, just before me, elsewhere. I don't like it. More importantly, I think you shouldn't like it. I'm not in the business of telling you what to think, but I do want to play upon your sympathies here. There's an adage: what you do most often is what you will do best. What you do most, you will do best. Makes sense, right? This is what we do in this society most: traffic and negativity. And it hit me, not because I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan, though I do wish I could sing and dance like he. I live near where he was busted, right near Sag Harbor, New York. Gorgeous place. Dream life that my wife and I have built for our family. The town is filled with media. For what? The guy's not even there anymore. My daughters were walking me around today, and they were like, what is all this attention? And this is the TikTok generation. And I was glad that it seemed odd to them. Now, don't get it twisted. DUI matters. Driving under the influence, of course. A lot of pain and death and loss come from people not drinking responsibly, let alone drinking and driving. It's not the issue. Assuming that's what happened. Timberlake didn't blow the breathalyzer, apparently, and the cop's description, to me, is very familiar in terms of what you will hear from police when someone won't take a breathalyzer. But that's neither here nor there. The case will be adjudicated. We got good cops out here. I know a lot of the men and women in that force, and if they're pushed to do the job, they're going to do the job. It's not about the facts for me. It's about the coverage. This is not a commitment to common concern, because we don't cover DUIs. This is for the local paper. This is for the crime log in your local paper. It's the appetite for the gotcha that consumes us, to show Justin Timberlake, and now let's fit him in with all the other celebrities who have done this. Let's judge him. Let's judge them, because it makes us feel better about ourselves, right? The magic of daytime television is what? To show people living lives that suck worse than your own, especially when they're bold-faced names. Love to see them come down, to feed this weird need to bring down others. And I got to be honest, seeing all that media there, I was just happy they weren't there for me. And I listened to them, and they were all saying the same things, same faux urgency. It all seems such a waste. And again, drinking and driving matters. That's not the question, because we don't cover it. We cover it when it's someone famous. We cover it when it's someone that we can entice you to appreciate, almost always in the negative. I can't think about the last time I heard about Justin Timberlake being covered because he just knocked the cover off the ball in a concert, right? Last thing I remember about him that got a lot of news was the thing with Janet Jackson. Imagine if the time, attention, and resources that arrived at our little hamlet were used to cover what matters, what could make things better, rather than traffic and what makes us worse. And look, I know I do it too. Everything I'm covering tonight is a negative. But we do it in the pursuit of a higher goal, not just to traffic in someone's problems in a misplaced sense of satisfaction or justice. And again, I don't even know that the guy did it. And I don't know him. And I don't want to interview him. I don't really care about the situation, to be honest. Nobody else was hurt. That's all that would matter to me, especially in my own community. But I do look around a lot more these days, and I see a lot that's wrong. And I really do believe in the commitment of this team to try to get us to a better place. I'm really trying to do that with this show, with the Chris Cuomo Project, with going on these other podcasts where these people are attacking me all the time, because I believe we got to reach out. We got to try getting to a better place. That's my perspective on the Timberlake story, that it is just another example of us at our worst. And I think that we can do better. So if you join me in that, and I know you do, otherwise you would not be seeking out NewsNation, let's get after it. Today, an arrest was made that is once again a metaphor for the reality of national security on our southern border. The details are very troubling. This is exactly the kind of case you want to stop. The rape of a 13-year-old girl in a park in New York City. This is the proverbial nightmare. The suspect is a textbook boogeyman a 25-year-old undocumented migrant from Ecuador. Exactly who people are warning you to be careful about coming into this country, a suggestion that I often feel is overextended and overwrought, and yet here we are, we got to deal with it. 2021, Christian Inga is the guy's name, comes across illegally, we are told. Caught by immigration, processed, set loose into the country. This is catch and release, hold. Remember why it happens. They don't have the resources or facilities to hold, to expel, to send back. And there is a policy of appeasement on the left to not treat people who enter illegally as if they are all criminals except for that crime of illegal entry. And it is a policy that has been proven to be a failure. Catch and release must die. And this story is proof of why. Last week, police say that this guy threatened a 13-year-old boy and girl with a machete in the park, tied them up, and sexually assaulted the girl. Last night, local citizens found him and detained him until police arrived to arrest him. He was lucky. Now, in context, yes, it's just one case here, one case there, but if you're not doing anything to address the common thread, it becomes a trend, right? Rachel Moran, this gorgeous mother of 5, an archetype of who we want to see leading our families, dead on a hiking trail in Maryland. Again, someone who came in illegally. Again, someone who shouldn't have been here. Today's New York Post cover dubbed him the open border killer because he reportedly tried crossing the border 4 times before going on this deadly crime spree. This is a problem for Biden because he has ignored the reality for years in deference to his left wing, who have a policy of appeasement. And this happens on a day when President Biden was addressing this by announcing a very important program. The Dreamers are the one group that everybody knows deserves to be treated better. We have millions of them in this country. They were brought here as children. Now he wants to extend the policy to hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants who are married to people who are citizens, but they are not. It's an extension of the Dreamers. This is a policy that in any normal time would be seen as an acceptable compromise. But now, Trump responded that Crooked Joe is sending a message to the world that he rewards illegal entry. Now, I say shame on Trump, and I'll tell you why. He has always supported the Dreamers and taking care of the Dreamers, and he knows this is an extension of that. And he's now having it both ways. But let's deal with the reality. Let's bring in a former acting director of ICE in the Obama administration, John Sandwig, and the attorney for Rachel Moran's family, Randolph Rice. Good, he's there. Good to have you, Randolph. I know we were having a little tech problem. Good to see you. First, John, let me start with you. Appreciate the work you did for the country, of course. What do you make of the context that I put this problem in, and what matters most to you as a matter of policy?
Well, look, Chris, I think you nailed it. I mean, the first issue is resources, right? To give ICE credit here, ICE is breathing through a fire hose at the border. We're getting 100 to 120,000 a month. ICE is funded by Congress for about 40,000 beds. Recognizing that you have to detain about 3 to 4, 5, 6 months before these overwhelmed immigration courts could make a decision on the case and deport, ICE would need about 700,000 beds. So, look, the Biden administration was slow to take action at the border. Last month they took action, or 2 weeks ago they took action. That should make a big difference. But the reality is we need to come together and fund the situation at the border, because it's not just the inability to detain guys like this when they first come into the United States, but it's also the ability later to respond. As I understand it, the guy in New York here was interacting with the police on multiple occasions. Yeah. That's where you want to see ICE be able to get those at-large, dangerous individuals. They can't do it right now. They're just so overwhelmed with the millions of people who come across the border.
So just one quick bounce question, then I want to bring in Randolph. The idea of just end, catch, and release, and this problem goes away, is that too simple a solution?
It's not a too simple a solution, Chris. It's too hard to execute, right? To be fair, right now we have asylum laws that say you cannot be deported until such time as an immigration judge decides you don't have a meritorious claim, setting aside the Biden recent order. We don't have immigration courts that can handle those claims, so therefore the people stack up. When they stack up and you only have 40,000 detention beds, which, by the way, cost the taxpayer billions of dollars, you either need to flood resources into the entire system so we can reinstate the rule of law at the border, or you need to change the rules entirely. But changing those rules, kind of goes against our culture as a nation where we give safe harbor to people fleeing persecution and goes against some international treaties. So I'm not saying it's easy. It is the answer. We just need to, find a solution one way or the other of how to do it.
Randolph, you know what the difference is between a guy like John and a politician? He talks nuance and solutions and doesn't just feed people the red meat. But now we got to get to the red meat. You represent the family of Rachel Moran. She is exactly the storybook mom that we want to protect in our society. Raising 5 kids, doing everything right, obviously gorgeous. She was a symbol of what we want in this country, stolen by exactly what we do not want in this country. How does the family process this situation?
Well, right now they're relieved, obviously, because of the fact that they caught this guy, they got the suspect in custody. They're also a little happy. Now, despite the fact that it's been 10 months of just agony and waiting and not knowing if this guy would ever be caught. So there is relief. There's a little bit of happiness. But now they've got to go through the process of the prosecution, which is going to be tough for them because he's going to come back to Maryland. He's going to be arraigned. He's going to have to appear for motions and hearings. And depending on if he takes a plea, if he goes to trial, it's just going to be a tough road for the family to hear the details and the facts of what this suspect did to their daughter, their sibling. It's just tough.
Randolph, what does the connective tissue, the correlation between what happened with Ms. Moran, what we've seen with Laken Riley, what we now just saw with this kid, what is the common thread that the family wants people to see?
Well, I can tell you this. We are hemorrhaging at the southern border, and Washington is fighting over what color tourniquet to put on this problem. And until they figure this out, we're going to have more Rachel Morans, and we've got to stop this. Americans are dying. It's not a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican problem. It's an American problem. Until they figure out how to stop this. And in this case, a criminal who we know committed a crime, murdered a woman in El Salvador, comes across the border and wreaks havoc in America. I mean, Chris, you know what they're doing in El Salvador over the past 2 years. They're locking up gang members. This man is a gang member. He fled the problems there and ultimately came in here and caused the problems in America.
Yeah. I mean, look, MS-13's been running all over us for a long time. Fentanyl has been the best thing that's ever happened to the illicit gang and drug trade in history. And we just don't want to deal with it, except once in a while when it kills somebody we care about for 5 minutes. Now, John, let me betray reality without betraying the source. So I know a lot of men and women on the job in New York, obviously NYPD and extended authorities. When I talk to them about this issue, they're like, come on, man. You really think that I have time when we're making these busts? I can't even get prosecutors to prosecute cases here on my own turf. And now I'm supposed to be dealing with ICE. Half the time they don't answer your calls. They don't have the resources. That's where the sanctuary cities came from in the first place, because we had to figure out how to deal with it because the feds didn't have the resources to deal with it. And even Laken Riley's, the assailant in that case, the idea that we're going to coordinate with ICE and get them picked up, that it sounds good, but it's really hard to do in practice. Do you agree? And if so, why?
Well, it is hard to do in practice. And look, there are resource constraints at ICE. And certainly there have been cases, when I was at ICE and after I left, where ICE failed to respond in time, right? Where the blame is on ICE. Now, in New York, it gets a little more complicated, of course, because of the sanctuary policy. And I'm in favor of, letting state and local law enforcement decide when interacting with ICE impairs their ability to do their job. But look, The bottom line is you just can't ask ICE to do its core function, which is protect public safety, when their hands are so tied with the situation at the border. And I'm not saying ICE doesn't make mistakes from time to time. They absolutely do. And I'm not saying that ICE would have even necessarily reacted in this case. But what I am saying here is that when their hands are so overwhelmed at the border, that they just lack the ability to get after that core mission. Look, Chris, one thing just to understand really quickly is that the work that ICE needs to be doing, the public safety work, is finding at-large gang members who have entered this country illicitly. That's hard work. It's slow work. Too often we look at ICE and we say, hey, how many people did you arrest? How many people did you deport? The quantity instead of looking at the quality. But that quality work is slow work and it's resource dependent. And again, just in this current environment they're in, they just don't have a chance to do it.
Can this be done unilaterally by the executive, or does it have to be legislative, John? You did the job.
Yeah, we're going to see. Look, I mean, ultimately it has to be legislative, right? Because ICE needs money to fly airplanes back to El Salvador, back to Guatemala.
Why can't the president just emergency close the border under the Immigration Naturalization Act right now and say it's an emergency, have to shut it down, period, no threshold, no 2,500, zero, until we catch up with the processing problems, and then turn around to Congress and say, now give me the resources because I can't do it unless I play funny money by taking from one agency and giving to another, and that's kind of violative of the constitutional process of the power of the purse.
Yeah. I mean, look, I got to tell you, Chris, we'll find out, right? I understand what you're saying. He's still allowing the 2,500 and the kind of caps and everything else. And you still have other programs that are, that the president is allowing people to make these asylum claims. But I mean, he's going to face the ACLU is already announced they're challenging the president's order. We'll see what the courts will allow. President Trump did try something similar using Section 212F of the INA in order to say the border's closed for asylum seekers who cross the border, unlawfully between the ports. Mm-hmm. He was shot down by the Ninth Circuit. So it'll be interesting to see how the courts this plays out. But look, at the end of the day, I think what you're going to see, Chris, and what we often see at the border is like the unintended consequences. So even as we've got all these asylum seekers coming up, we say the border's closed, no longer can you stay until your asylum case, we're sending you back to Mexico. I think we'll just see very quickly a reversion to what we saw up until about 2016, which is groups crossing into this country illegally, evading capture, right? These days, they stopped evading capture. And the one benefit of what's going on now is we get to grab each person, we get to take their biometrics, we get to screen them. Now, in Ms. Moran's case, there was a critical failure. He was wanted in El Salvador. We should have better information sharing to know that, so that when he comes to that border, we see he's got a criminal record in El Salvador, and we save a detention bed for him. But generally speaking, there is some benefit to what's going on now, in that we get those biometrics, which are later used to solve both of these horrific crimes.
So many men and women like you, John, who did the job for the right reasons. So many families now like the Morans who have a representative like Randolph who now have to feel the pain of bad policy. And here's the shame. We all know it can be fixed. This is not cancer. This could be fixed. It's about the problem working better than working on a solution for the people in power. Randolph, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Please send my best, Mr. Rice, to the family. And John Sandwick, thank you very much. To be continued. 4 minutes, 5 seconds. Coming up. So, blast from the past. Buster Murdaugh, remember that? The son of convicted double murderer Alec Murdaugh, filed a defamation suit against Netflix. Now, we've seen more than one of these for docuseries. All this streaming, all this true crime. Now there seems to be a pushback, and we're going to look at it through the lens of another suit by the woman at the center of the hit Netflix series Baby Reindeer, where she was portrayed as a, in quotes, convicted stalker. Is Netflix playing too much with the word true when it comes to true crime? A lawyer for the real life Martha from Baby Reindeer. Next.
There you are! You cowardly, two-time... The nerve you showed me the other night, rubbing that in my face.
All right, that's enough, Martha.
You've made an enemy of me, Reindeer. Make no mistake about it. I hope you know what you've done in wounding me like this.
Familiar? Should be. 60 million people have watched this Netflix blockbuster series, Baby Reindeer. Now, though, the streaming giant is being sued by the woman at the center of the series. Why? Well, one could say that we are seeing a reckoning of how true the true crime is that we're all obsessed with. So, in Baby Reindeer, you got a Scott woman who claims to be the inspiration for the main character, Martha, a woman who relentlessly stalks and harasses a comedian. So now she's suing Netflix. She is 58-year-old Fiona Harvey. She claims she has suffered defamation, negligence, and privacy violations to the tune of $170 million. Now, let's set aside justifying the amount for a moment and look at justifying the root of the wrong. What is it? Well, the argument is that Netflix and other platforms hook us. Why? Because these stories are really compelling. Why? Because they're real and often based on what actually happened. And there's something very appealing about that. The true in true crime matters, right? That's why it's called true crime and not just crime where they can make it up. Netflix claims Baby Reindeer is based on a true story. So here is what the plaintiff, the woman suing, told Piers Morgan about claims that she harassed Baby Reindeer creator and star Richard Gadd with tens of thousands of emails.
I didn't write him the emails.
Who do you think did?
I have no idea. I think he probably made them up himself. I've no idea. 41,000 emails.
Yeah. I mean, would
I don't know.
Would you accept that someone who did that would be very obsessive about someone?
Yes. I mean, that's a lot of emails.
Now, I got to be honest. I didn't know where Piers was going in this interview. I didn't know that he was going to pull out a gotcha on her or some kind of context. It was just kind of all there open as a suggestion. No criticism. I'm just saying, where does this leave us? Harvey's lawsuit alleges Netflix told, quote, brutal lies about her in the Baby Reindeer series, including that she was a convicted felon. We're joined now by an attorney for Harvey, Richard Roth. Counsel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
So what is the basic support for your allegation?
So it's pretty simple. Again, and you hit it on the nose. When Netflix starts the series, it doesn't say this is based on a true story. It doesn't say this is inspired by a true story. It says 5 words. This is a true story, just like true crime. This is a true story, then you better make sure it's true. And a spoiler alert if you haven't seen the series. But during the series, it comes up that she was convicted of stalking and spent 4.5 years in jail. Never happened, never even arrested. And then at the end of the series, the last episode, she pleads guilty to 4 different counts of harassment and gets 4 more felony convictions. So they portray this woman as a 2-time convicted felon when we pulled the records and she's never even been arrested for anything. Now, that's not the end of it. That's the beginning. But if you're going to say on a true story that someone's convicted of a crime twice and spent really over 5 years in jail, then you better be accurate because there are people that it affects. And in the world we live in, it was very easy to find out who the Martha of the story was.
Let's talk about that. Because that's the crux of it for me. We'll get to truth as a defense to defamation and what's true, what's not in a second. But this is the UK where you're bringing this, and they have much more let's say, sensitive jurisprudence there and legislation when it comes to suing for these things. I think you'd have a hard time in the United States. The main reason is they don't call her by name. And you could argue nobody would know who Martha really is unless she had come forward. So why is it that she is identifying herself? Nobody would have known who Fiona Harvey is.
Sure. Well, first of all, the lawsuit has been brought in Los Angeles, California, so it's in the U.S. But in today's day and age, if you want to put someone on TV, you have to at least mask it. She's the same size. She has the same Scottish accent. She went to the same bar. The tweets she used, it's very easy today. I can't do it, but Gen Z can do it. You take her words of her tweet and you put them in Google and you can find out who did it. Her tweets, her Facebook, everything that she said, they use the exact same words in a nanosecond. You can Google it and find out who did it. Now, if you want to do a true story, then you somehow disguise it. You make her look different. You make her from different heritage. You give her a different accent, make it a different bar. They did nothing. Everything in here leads to Fiona Harvey, and it's very easy to find out who it is. It doesn't take an internet sleuth. It takes someone, even me, who could just take the words from the tweets in the show, put them on my computer, and boom, you know who it is. So it's really bad. And the reason why she came on and answered your second question is because she's been harassed, she's been stalked, she's getting death threats, she's afraid to go out and buy groceries, and she's not a public figure. So this woman now, who is not a public figure, is now worried. She's destroyed. She's shattered. So you can't, if you want to have a true story, you better make sure it's true, and you better say it. You better not say it's true if it isn't.
Right. You know what I'm about, Richard. I'm not here to run down your client. I just want to poke at this assertion a little bit, and I'll get to a second. I'll play a clip of why I'm contextualizing it under UK law, because that's what Netflix came out and made their case in front of a UK body, and I want to talk about that because I get what their angle is here. She was accused. I mean, look, the basic question is your client a stalker? Because you got this Scottish lawyer named Laura Ray who says Fiona stalked her, was terrified of her. Richard Gadd obviously has his own experience. Does she have a little culpability here for her own actions?
Well, it's funny because if you watch the Laura Ray interview also on Piers Morgan, Laura Ray said, it never raised to the level of a crime. I never even sought a criminal arrest. The laws have not changed. And to say someone's been in jail for 4.5 years is outrageous. So Laura Ray, who claims that 22 years ago she was stalked by Fiona Harvey, even came to her defense during the interview by Piers Morgan. So it really does make a difference. What happened 22 years ago, quite frankly, I don't care about. What I care about is that, we live in, God, no one knows better than you, that we live in a world where fake news, we thrive on fake news. We thrive on fake TV. And when someone says this is true, it better be true. And it's no different whether you're a network, whether you're a streaming service, whether you're a newspaper. Right. You can't say something's truthful if it's not. And you know that as well as anyone.
I get it. And it sucks when you're a public person because it's got to be reckless disregard. It's got to be actual malice. It's a very, very high standard. And I understand the reasons for it. But, I was surprised. I'm a big fan of Piers Morgan, and I watched the interview. And look, either she's the person who was responsible for giving Gadd the agita, or she wasn't. And it seemed like she didn't want to have that conversation. Is she Martha or not? I mean, if she wants to have the lawsuit and say, look, I'm Martha, then does she own what Martha did, which is maybe it wasn't 40,000 emails, but it was a ton of them, and she had a real thing for this comedian? Is that the truth?
So the truth is she was Martha, but she did not do what they said. Richard Gadd's never going on that show. I don't know if you focused at all on the Richard Gadd character. The man is as deranged as anyone I've ever seen. I mean, he talks and he shows. It's a pretty graphic series, pretty dark. But the man admits to being raped. He admits to all kinds of things, and it's a story which not only, remember, he wrote it and he stars in it. So he knows better than anyone else whether it's truthful or not. So if she's the real Martha, but the story that they tells are not applicable to her, then who's harmed? She's harmed because he creates her into this monster, which she isn't, and that's the difficulty. That's the problem that Netflix has.
So Netflix, the policy chief, went before the UK Parliament, and I won't waste people's time with the clip. Dusty doesn't want to hear it. But he says that, the woman portrayed is a convicted stalker. We can't find any legitimacy for that, and that may be the best thing you have going for you. And that Richard Gadd, allegedly, may have suggested that calling it a true story may not be right when he was working it through with Netflix, but there's so much pressure on true crime being called true crime that they went with it. Those are both bad facts for them and good facts for you, if true.
tremendous facts. Think about it. When someone goes to testify in front of Congress or in front of Parliament, you don't think they're going to have their teams of lawyers. You know what they're going to be asked. I mean, think about who goes in front of Parliament. So he was prepared, and he went in and he said, yes, she was a convicted felon. That was false. So that's defamation. It's a huge fact for me. And the second fact on Richard Gadd, quite frankly, Richard Gadd, if it's one thing, if Richard Gadd said to them, this is a true story, and they didn't do their investigation. It's far worse if Richard Gadd, which is what he's saying now, told Netflix, this is not true. Put it inspired by, put it based by. And Netflix said, no, we're going to make it a true story. Netflix is one of the largest corporations in the country and one of the biggest streaming services. And for them to tell Richard Gadd, we're making it true when you said it wasn't, creates a monstrous problem for Netflix.
I hear you as a practitioner, as a lawyer. There is a sympathy gap with your client. She's welcome to come on the show with you to address the audience, because that's the hurdle. I don't know what it will mean in court, but in the court of public opinion, Fiona Harvey's got to convince people, one, I may be Martha, but I wasn't the Martha that they portray, and you should care about the difference in terms of the quality of my life. She's welcome here to make the case. I appreciate you laying out the legalities. You're both welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Richard Roth, to be continued. 4 minutes, 30 seconds coming up. Now, we got to stay on what matters, okay? I know we all want the pandemic to be gone. Nobody wants that more than I do, okay? Here's the problem. COVID is not gone. And I'm not saying that people are still getting sick with COVID. We know they are. It's that people get more sick since COVID, even if it's not COVID. Related absences from work are up 42%. New studies show that since the pandemic, flu, strep, respiratory infections, what am I doing walking around in almost July this sick? It's up 30 to 40%. Two big questions. Why aren't we taking this more seriously? What is the truth? Next. We are more sick since the pandemic, and not just because of COVID. That's our reality. What are we going to do about it? How do we know? 100 different ways. Workers taking sick days since the pandemic, up 42%. And again, it's not just, because they had COVID. No. I'm saying since that, okay? Those who call in sick are also staying away longer. Flu cases, up 40% compared to before the pandemic. Strep throat, respiratory illnesses. Now, let's not talk about excess mortality. We've covered it here. We'll keep covering it. Young people dying more of things that don't usually kill young people. Now, a lot of people, especially on the fringe, want to say, yeah, it's the vaccine. We don't know that. We don't really know anything except the reality that there's more sickness since then. And I'm living proof of it. I'm sick every 4 to 6 weeks. I know I look like I could squat a Toyota, but I'm telling you, on the inside, this long COVID is killing me. All right? We're seeing whooping cough, dengue fever, all kinds of shite. So, what does it mean to us? Is it COVID? Is it something COVID related? Are we looking? Look at these diseases making a comeback. Why? Let's bring in Mount Sinai Health System COVID specialist, Dr. David Petrino. Doc, I told you I'd have you back, and I'm going to keep having you back because, frankly, you're a precious commodity, which is a clinician who's got the resources and the resolve to look at these questions. First, am I full of balagna? Do you believe there is more illness since the pandemic, as we've been seeing excess mortality since the pandemic? Do you believe that that is true?
No, absolutely. I think that this observation is spot on. You're not the first person to make it. And we're certainly starting to see more and more studies that indicate that individuals are more susceptible to many respiratory viruses and other forms of viruses, not just COVID, since the pandemic.
So, in social media, where I keep telling you not to go, you will find a community who will say, yeah, it was the vaccine. This is all vaccine related. There is no such thing as long COVID. There is only long vax. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. I think I've been fairly clear on the fact that we do believe that vaccine injury is real and that there is a subset of individuals who have experienced that. However, we have been seeing thousands of individuals with long COVID prior to vaccination with the COVID-19 vaccine. And we were seeing patients in 2020 before, anyone had released a vaccine. So long COVID is certainly related to infection from SARS-CoV-2. What we also know is that when you're infected with COVID-19, even if it's a mild infection, we know that SARS-CoV-2 seems to affect the immune system. Our group, along with our collaborators from Yale and Stanford University, as well as other groups, have published multiple times that even mild COVID infections seem to affect the way that your natural killer cells attack infections. It seems to affect the way that our T cells attack infections and protect us from infections. So I think one of the notions that we actually need to challenge is, for the longest time, we've told people that, if you get an illness and you recover, it just makes you stronger. What we're seeing over and over again is that's not the case with COVID. Every time you get a COVID infection, your immune system seems to suffer. It's kind of like a boxer. Every fight takes a little bit more out of them. And they're not getting stronger with every fight. They're not getting stronger with every hit that they take. Every single time, there's an increased chance that something bad is going to happen to the immune system. And I think that this influx of illness that we're seeing is related to that.
Look, I believe I'm living it. I hope I'm wrong. But people are losing their voice right now. There's some virus going along. Not me. I get it. Goes right into my sinuses, right into my lungs. And now I'm on, enough medications to fill up a CVS just to keep me on television. I have more steroids on me than The Rock right now. Not the same type. But, I have to do a lot more to stay healthy ever since I got long COVID. Now, I want to make this point, very fine point. One of the problems that many clinicians like you had during the pandemic of people saying, don't worry about COVID. We have ivermectin, we have hydroxychloroquine, we got all these different things you can take. We'll make you fine, and they work great on people. And people like you and my doctor, Dr. Robin Rose, were sounding the alarm saying COVID's a different animal. If you're exposed to it, it's doing things to you down the road that we're seeing that we don't yet understand. What do we do about this now if it's true that even a mild exposure to COVID can create non-COVID related illness in people? Where's the urgency? Where's the alarm bells going off?
We need to be very, very firm with our messaging that there is no such thing as a mild SARS-CoV-2 infection. There is no such thing as a SARS-CoV-2 infection that does not have prolonged consequences. Until we can fully understand the long-term effects of COVID and who is susceptible and who is not, the only thing that we can do to protect ourselves, our families, our immune systems in the long term is to avoid infection.
Dr. Petrino, I want to keep this conversation going as you learn things in your practice. If you see things that are out there that are wrong, see things out there that need to be corrected, see things out there that need to be understood, we are always a phone call away. Dr. David Petrino, thank you for your work. Thank you for helping on a problem that many are way too willing to ignore.
I appreciate you platforming this, and I will reach out. Thank you.
Doc, take care. Now, you may notice as we go into break, you notice how I didn't talk to him about what he's doing to fix it? We're not there. You got to flood this with urgency. People are just going to keep getting sicker, and people are going to make excuses, and they're going to play their own agenda, and they don't give a damn about the reality. But you must. And get your leaders talking about it, because they're ignoring it at our expense. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Now, when we come back, where are we in terms of the best predictor of who's going to win the presidential race? 9 out of the last 10. Lichtman is here. What's his read on the latest state of play? Why talk politics when I can check in with the best? Distinguished Professor of American History at American University, Professor Alan Lichtman. 9 out of the last 10 races he's gotten right. So, what's your take on the state of play?
Yeah, quickly, I would say 10 out of 10 because 2000 was a stolen election. due to the cancellation of the black vote, as I proved in my report to the United States Commission on Civil Rights, which is still on their website. But let's not quibble about that. So my advice to all of your viewers is take the polls and the pundits and do to their analyses what the great philosopher David Hume said you should do to works of superstition. Consign them to the flames. Polls are snapshots. They are abused as predictors, and the pundits have no scientific basis and no track record for their predictions. So let's turn to a system that does have a track record by 13 keys to the White House, which is premised on the idea that American elections are essentially votes up or down on the strength and performance of the White House party. Chris, you'll think this is very positive. It's governance, not campaigning, that counts. So where do we stand right now? 6 of these keys would have to go against the White House party, that's Joe Biden, to predict their defeat. Right now, for certain, Biden has lost 2 keys. Party mandate, because they lost House seats in 2022, and incumbent charisma, because he's no FDR or JFK. So 4 more keys would have to fall. And I've said, a lot would have to go wrong for Biden to lose. It can happen. So I will tell all your viewers what are the 4 keys you should look at. The polls can't tell you this. The pundits can't tell you what's going to determine this election. Third party. Is RFK Jr. going to get on the ballot in enough states? Is he going to stabilize at least at 10% or more? Social unrest, which I thought for a while was safe, but are we going to get, an explosion of social unrest as we get closer to the election? Remember,
put the keys up while Alan's talking.
Enough to call into question the stability of the country. And then the shakiest keys, given the 2 wars that are raging, foreign military failure and foreign military success. Keys 10,
see, that's why I'm saying,
11.
Alan, why don't you see the 6, and now things can change, obviously, but why don't you see at least 6? The mandate, party contest, no. Incumbency, fine. Third party, of course. Short-term economic, even though the data's there, the message isn't. Long-term economy, same. Policy change, there's this feeling in the electorate that things have gotten worse. Social unrest, wild card. Scandal, constantly. The foreign problems with the Middle East and Ukraine. And then 12 and 13. You got so many people in the Democratic Party who are afraid Biden's not going to make it and they don't want Harris. Why isn't it already in the cards?
Because you've got to stick to the keys. I understand you and a lot of the other commentators, and I respect you all, have your own take on the election. You can develop your own prediction system, and that's fine. But you've got to stick to the keys. You can't say the polls show these perceptions 6 months out from the election, so we have to change the keys. That's a sure recipe for error. Biden has not lost the short-term economy key, which depends upon the National Bureau of Economic Research declaring this a recession. You may think something else. That's fine. He's won the long-term key because growth is so strong. And Trump does not count as charismatic because under my system, you have to be broadly charismatic. Reagan and FDR won landslide elections. Trump lost 2 elections by 10 million votes.
Alan Lichtman is tough to disagree with because he's always right. Alan Lichtman, thank you very much for giving us your current read on the 13 keys. We'll keep checking in with Alan for one simple reason. He's the best, and I will not waste your time with the rest. We'll be right back.